word. That's like mayonnaise. I'm sure that's the biggest word I know.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back on into the Blitz NFL player props with none other than Derek Carty of EV Analytics. I'm Thomas Viola, and it is another fantastic Friday. Derek, how are you doing today, my friend? It's good to be back.
Yeah, I'm doing well. Coming off a decent week 4, nothing crazy, but a good one.
Yeah.
And seeing quite a bit of value on the board today. The lines are moving extremely quickly, so we'll see what's still available to us when we get there. But there is definitely some stuff out there. Some lines just got released today that have moved quickly, but are showing some value. So we got some stuff for you guys. I think we have 6 if we're lucky.
Yeah. I know. I saw you putting the props in the chat so that we could get our graphics made earlier, and I was like, "Ooh, it's a good slate today." I did pretty well last week. Teasers killed me, but I feel like teasers have been killing everyone for the last 2 years plus at this point. But we had a decent week last week overall. Looking at the record, not our best so far on the season. We went 2-3 last week in terms of our plays here, but there was certainly a lot that we talked about on the show, and I feel like you definitely have been making some money if you've been playing a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about. Although last week, not quite our greatest, but hey.
Yeah, we talked about it last year when we kind of got off to a little bit of a start like this. We're giving out so few plays on this show. Like the sample size is so small. If you're playing a bunch of plays using the Blitz, you can check out my I keep a spreadsheet with my bets that I do for like all the different outlets that I do stuff with.
Yeah.
Like I've been profitable this year. Users, for the most part, I think have been profitable this year. It has been a slow start. I think it's just been a weird year, but I'm excited to get this going forward. And hopefully we're not on the wrong side of just dumb variance. I feel like we've been on all the time, like that Watson one last week.
Yeah.
It was the single worst call. He threw like a 80-yard touchdown to Amari Cooper that would have put him over the line. And it got called back on like the worst holding call you've ever seen. The announcers were like, they called that holding?
Yeah.
Like it's just stuff like that I feel like has been nonstop so far this year. But it's going to stop being like that.
Yeah. Patrick Mahomes went like 1 yard under his prop for me. I lost on that one. Jansen Webb saying, would have cashed my Cooper bet too. James Rowe going, which props have CLV already? What's the Mata saying? Long time no see, Mr. Carty and Boglor's here. So is Chaos saying the A-team. But yeah, it's just there was some bad luck. Demario Douglas finished with 3 receptions, and he really could have had a 4th in that game. And I accidentally double popped that one. So that was unfortunate, but it was a really good prop week overall, even with the sample size from the official stuff we were looking at on the show here, not quite going our way. But you guys know that in addition to the props that we talk about specifically, we're also here to talk about your suggestions, your interests as well. So feel free to throw those in the chat as well. As Milo says, hello there. Estefanos already getting us going. Looking at Jerome Ford's lines. We'll be sure to talk about him. Clips saying hello, happy to be here. Thanks for doing this, guys. Milo lucked out. He had Demario 2.5. Nice work there. And Ryan Moran saying one last MLB stream. I mean, if the people demand it, maybe we will have to do one for one of these days. We'll see. Chaos saying last night was amazing. Had a volume night, but it turned out amazing. That's good. We love to see it, and we love to see all of you popping off in chat because it really does make the show that much better. So thank you so much. Keep them coming. But right now, Derek, shall we get into some plays here? Let's start talking about some props for the week. Where are we going first, my friend?
We are going back to Demario Douglas. We're getting a 2.5 line this week. This opened maybe an hour and a half ago that I noticed, and it was like plus 115, plus 116, and it has been plummeting already. Rivers, you can get a minus 103 right now, which is going to be the best line. But some books are as low as like minus 125, I think MGM is at. Actually, we can scroll right here and see. MGM's minus 125. Even Bet365 is minus 120. You're still seeing value on these numbers. But if you can get like the minus 103 or a minus 110 or even this minus 114 at FanDuel, you're definitely going to be in better shape. Douglas got those 3 last week, had the monster week before that. He's one of their better players. They want to get him the ball. He's good. Kendrick,
which is an astounding endorsement for a Patriots wide receiver at this point.
it really is. I mean, Patriots, there's not a lot of good to say about the Patriots, but there's even a chance they're playing from behind here against Miami, even without Tua. I think Miami is the better team. Kendrick Bourne had his window opened. Probably not going to play this week. I'm hoping he doesn't. If he does, I mean, 2.5 is still fairly low, but obviously we like this better if Bourne is not activated.
Yeah, that is definitely a very
big
big
and they
deal.
did say, what's his name? Stupid guy. I forget. How do I always mess his name? KJ Osborne. Mm-hmm. He might not play this week. So
yeah,
a little bit. And then they're trying to trade Tyquan Thornton. So like Douglas is clearly going to be one of the focal points of this offense.
Yeah, I think it's clear that they want to get the ball to him as much as they can. Shout out to the Patriots for not just throwing Drake May into the fire, though. I wish they would, because I love seeing the Patriots not succeed. But I think that is the absolute smart thing for them to do in this situation. And let's face it, Jacoby Brissett can actually throw the football a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, he's not terrible. Like, he's a capable NFL quarterback.
Mm-hmm. Blue asking, best I can find is -120 playable. Our numbers are saying that's still playable. Yeah.
It's saying it's still playable. Yeah. Obviously not as good, but still playable.
Mm-hmm. Boglor pointing out Patriots wide receiver seems to be Hunter Henry, Polk, Douglas. That pretty much tracks. And how Mets wants to know about the Cowboys running backs. We will definitely be talking about them here. Tyler Jackson saying ESPN still has this at -110 here. And we should definitely go back. Boglor says we should definitely go back to those Brissett rushing attempts unders. He will not run. That is, I completely agree with that. All right, Derek, where are we headed next year? We've got Demario Douglas. What is up next on the slate for us?
We are doing, hopefully our lines are still all there. Yep. Roschon Johnson. We had +115 before, but +105 I think is still reasonable enough. The Blitz is projecting under that. You know, when you consider distributions, 16% is usually not quite what I want to see. I want a little higher, but I'm okay with this one still. I don't think I go much lower than 105. But if you can get it there, I think this one is still good. There was some, I got to log back in.
Your timeout hit.
Stop sharing while I do that. There was some talk last week about him taking over for DeAndre Swift. That didn't happen, and Swift's efficiency finally came back. Like, Swift is the leader of this backfield. Roschon is clearly number 2. He'll see a little work in the pass game, but I think the under here looks pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, they don't really do much passing to the running backs at all when it comes to what Chicago is doing here, which is surprising because you'd think with a rookie quarterback you'd be checking down a lot more. But Caleb Williams still finding his legs and also constantly under siege due to the complete lack of an offensive line in Chicago. Who knew that if you kept the same offensive line that couldn't keep Justin Fields upright, they weren't going to do a better job for Caleb Williams?
Who saw that? I like the point about not throwing to the running backs, though. This is Shane Waldron's the OC, I think. He was doing the same thing in Seattle. Like, his offense, they just don't really throw a lot of passes to running backs.
Nitish, by the way, this is receptions under for Roschon, not yards.
Yes.
Although honestly, you're probably making the same bet when you're looking at an under 1.5.
Yeah. Oh, Blitz, not blended.
There we go.
All right. Moving on, right?
Yeah. I mean, let's take a look at his receiving yards just for the fun of it. Why not? We're here, right? But it's probably going to be right around the same. The difference is you're getting +105 on the other one instead of -120.
Yeah. Value looks about the same. I think I like the reception a little more, but either one is, comparable.
Mm-hmm. All right. Where do we want to hit next, Eric?
We are going to go to the rushing attempts market, and we are looking at Devon Achane.
I am very surprised that we're going under on Achane here. You would think that they would want to get him the ball, given the fact that they don't have a quarterback.
You would think, but generally speaking, when teams go from a backup quarterback to or go from like a starting quarterback to their backup quarterback, the drop off from passing to running is there, but it's not like crazy. And they've talked a lot about how in practice this week, Huntley looks good. Raheem Mostert is coming back this week, probably going to be limited. But Mostert in the mix will take some touches away from Achane. Playing and playing the Patriots, like this is probably just going to be a bad, slow slog of a game. And so I'm on board here. I want to see what they did last week. Last week they went more run heavy, but Huntley had only been on the team for like a week, 10 days. I think it's going to be similar to what we saw with Malik Willis. The first week Malik Willis started for Green Bay, they went really run heavy, and then they went a bit more reasonable. And I kind of think that's what we're going to see with Miami this week.
Yeah, I agree. Like you have another week to install the quarterback in the game plan here. Remember, they did go Skylar Thompson the first week, so this is week 2 for Terrell Huntley.
And the Skylar Thompson week, they were actually incredibly pass heavy. They were 10% above average. So yeah, so if they do anything like that again, now that Huntley's installed a little bit, this looks good. Yeah.
Chaos New York has a question for you. Chaos is what New York is going to be experiencing with this Mets-Phillies series, by the way. But he has a question for you. Can you talk a little bit about the decision in taking a reception-based prop versus receiving yards? Simple thought process would be great. Additionally, is it bad to double up on reception and receiving yard prop if both showing an edge above a better desired threshold? Boglor already has some comments in the chat for him. But just to follow up on that, I'll defer to you, but I would say it varies depending on the situation. With what we were looking at with Roschon Johnson, you're very clearly, when you're dealing with numbers that small, you're very clearly looking at it like, okay, is he going to catch 1 or 2 passes? Because odds are if he's catching 1 or 2 passes, he's going over 10 yards. And so you're kind of looking at the same bet. And in that case, you want to take the price. But Derek, what do you think, especially when it comes to maybe some other wide receivers, when you get to a little bit larger numbers, what you're looking at?
Yeah, I don't think there's, FanDuel just dropped to 11.5. All right. Well, ooh, that's a nice thing to see. I don't think there's a right answer. Because over the long run, if you're betting a ton of props, if they both have edge, they both have edge, but they are going to be correlated, whether they're somewhat correlated or highly correlated. So a lot of times if one wins, the other wins. And if one loses, the other loses. Won't always be the case, but a lot of times. And so really it's just a matter of your risk tolerance. Like if you're betting a ton of these every single week and you have a big sample size to even it out, maybe you don't care about betting both. If you're just kind of, picking and choosing, then maybe you're just, you're picking one because you don't want to place basically the same bet twice. It really, there's not a right answer. It's a matter of personal risk tolerance. For me, I generally lean more towards the volume based markets than the yardage based ones. Generally speaking, they show more value anyway, not quite as popular, don't move quite as quickly, a little more predictable. But really, I'm kind of just following the value.
Yeah. And then another thing that you want to keep in mind if you are choosing both, if you see two that are very similar, they're very similar edges and similar numbers, if you want to disperse it a little bit, think of it as you're betting the same edge here. So you don't want to double up on your edge, but you do want to be able to go and say, okay, maybe I want to mix it up. And so you'll say, I have one unit that I want to put on this edge. And you could split that unit and do half and half if you want to. Yeah, like you have multiple ways to attack it. There's not really a wrong answer there. So if you want maybe a little less liability on the more volatile receiving yards number, you can put part of your unit on the receptions market and then put the other part on that. That's definitely another way to do it. Estefanos Robertson says, does Hard Rock have rush attempts? It's the only legal book in Florida. I'm sure someone in the chat can answer that question. I believe they would. And we will pretty soon have Hard Rock on the screen here for you, Estefan. I promise that. Jim Robinson asked, Derek, do you ever model rushing plus receiving numbers? I try to target high usage players, but often get screwed on rushing yards when the team opts for dump off passes and vice versa. Any insight there?
It's not a market I do very often. It's one I've actually thought about looking into where I know EV Analytics is thinking about maybe trying to add that one. I don't have a lot of insight into it now because I don't have a lot of experience with it.
Yeah. All right. Where do you want to head next, Derek? We've still got a couple more that we want to get to. And then, of course, throw your questions in the chat. We are here to answer them.
We are staying on rushing attempts, and we're going on the over this time. We're looking at DeAndre Swift. Over 12.5, minus 110 at MGM. I think ESPN has the same line. There's some 115s out there, pretty widely available. Like I said with Roschon, DeAndre Swift, like this is DeAndre Swift's backfield. He's gotten 65% of the carries or so this year, especially outside the red zone. This is a game that is going to be sneaky fast-paced. This projects as one of the fastest-paced games on the slate. So potentially a lot of plays run. And they're facing the Panthers. I mean, they're better with Andy Dalton now, but this is a chance where Chicago could have a lead and could just, lean on the run more. Mm-hmm. Either way, though, it's a low number for a guy who's getting the bulk of the carries for an offense.
Yeah. And DeAndre Swift, they're finally realizing, oh, hey, he's probably the back that we're going to be using, as James Rowe points out that he sucks. But if he's getting the carries, that's all that really matters for us.
They did talk a lot about him. Coach Speak Index, hat tip Coach Speak Index. They talked about him this week. They said how dynamic he is, how they like getting the ball in his hands. Finally had that good week last week, efficiency wise. I think they hand him the ball.
Yeah. Sports Video saying, can we see what the price was for Kirk Cousins' 500 plus passing yards last night? I can only imagine. That was incredible.
Yeah, right. That had to be I don't even know what that would be priced as.
Yep. Kirktober, baby. It is real. All right. We do have questions in the chat, but we have a couple more that we want to get to here first. What's next?
Next up, we are going to Tyler Huntley. I bet this one last week, and I was really excited about it, and it didn't work out. But these are the kind of bets that I love the most. If you've used the Blitz in in past years, we haven't had a lot of opportunities yet this year because the season's still very young. But the Blitz will like bad backup quarterback overs. And generally speaking, we've done really well on them. Didn't work out with Huntley last week. But again,
the chat is revolting against you, Derek. Sports Videos goes, oh no, Carty, not again. James Rowe goes, here we go again, and
we're running it back. We are. We have to. We have to do it. Again, I think it's a similar situation to the Malik Willis thing, where he hadn't been with the team that long. They went really run heavy. This week, they've talked about how good he looks in practice. How they even said last week, like he didn't even play that well last week, but they didn't throw him under the bus at all. They were like, yeah, like it wasn't just Huntley. Like everyone was kind of like failing on their assignments and stuff. And they're talking about how he looks good this week, another week installed in the offense. So I like Huntley, especially if they go more pass heavy. 16.5 is a low number. And even though he's probably not very good, he has an elite core of receivers to throw to. 16.5 is not a terrible it's not a terribly high bar. So I'm on this. Looks like FanDuel even has a 15.5. You have to pay some juice for it. I prefer the 16, but either way is fine with me. I am going back to Huntley this week.
We are Sports Video says I'll be happy for you if it wins, but not betting my money on it.
See, that's the thing though. Those are the ones that you want to bet. The ones that are so gross, you're like, why am I doing this?
Yep.
That's why, because the books know you don't want to bet it. So they set him at 16.5 instead of 17.5 or 18.5 where he should be.
And Wagered on Tilt pointing out here, this is where I prefer to bet bands, or at least. Often there is value past just the over. Bet less, win more when it comes to when it can get wild with the backup quarterback. He says it works well for him, but he may be an idiot. I know that he's not an idiot, but hey, what do you think about that? And then we do also have a question from Marwell saying, I already bet them, but are you worried about Achane under attempts and Huntley over completions being too correlated with each other? We have talked about that over the course of a long season. Taking some of those correlated bets, it's going to wash out with the rain. You're going to win some, you're going to lose some.
Yeah. So they are correlated. I think there's some non-correlation to it. Like if Miami blows them out, then yeah, they both probably lose. if the game's closer, I think there's plenty of scenarios where they both win. Even if if Miami's trailing, then obviously they both are going to have a good shot of winning. But if the game's close, if it's anything other than a Miami blowout, I think this still has a great chance to hit both because again, Huntley, the number's low, great receiving core. And Achane wasn't just about, we don't think they're going to run the ball a lot. It's also about like Mostert is back in the mix and they're, talking about how good Jalen Wright looks. And there's other facets to it as well.
Yeah, as Sports Videos points out, since you are on Achane unders, are you giving more work to Jalen Wright? He played a lot on Monday night. He really did.
Yeah, he did. I still have Achane as the lead back in this backfield. I think I'm projected for, I don't know, maybe 50% of the work or so. But Mostert's going to come back, even limited. You have to think he's going to get 15, 20%. You got to assume the same probably for Jalen Wright, at least. Huntley will get some design carries. They'll tee some stuff up for Tyreek Hill or Waddle. It's not like Achane is going to get all the work here, I don't think.
Yeah. MGM, Jim Robinson points out, lets you parlay passing props. Huntley over 16.5 completions and 25.5 attempts paced plus 230. That's a big deal. As Sports Video says, I forgot about Mostert. I like Achane under now. And we also do have some questions going back to DeAndre Swift. If we want to get back into that, because Tyler Jackson was curious. Tyler Jackson and Toy Flashback were both curious about his overs for attempts. Tyler Jackson's got 14.5 attempts at plus 180. We can look at the prop simulator for that. Meanwhile, Toy Flashback says, is that number okay at plus 115? Yes.
Yeah. We can open the prop simulator. So this is our projection here. Go over here, running back, rushing, the rushes.
And by the way, for those of you that have thrown in some other questions there that are about other players, I'm going to go back and get to all of you. I see you guys once we get through the plays that we want to highlight and talk about here. The rest of the show is all you, and I'll be going back through the chat and getting all of your questions in there. So don't worry, we have not missed you guys.
What was the number he was looking at for Swift?
He was looking at 14.5 attempts at plus 180.
Oh, yeah. This says break evens minus 126. So you're getting a lot of value there still.
Yeah. So you are looking good there, Tyler. Toy Flashback, you're okay. And then Andrew Rivers says, can we check Swift yards? Seems to be quite a bit of variance in the lines offered.
Let's take a look. Rushing yards. So some value, not as much as the attempts. It looks like a low of 49.5, high of 52.5.
Yeah.
So again, it's okay. I don't think I would bet that. But I definitely would bet the carries.
Mm-hmm. Milo point out, Jim, that same parlay at Caesars is minus 134. Holy crap.
So you're really getting offered a great number there.
All right. I think Jim just found, I think Jim is going to regret putting that in the channel there because he might have just found some MGM alpha. And all right. Who is next up for us here before we start fielding some more audience questions?
Yes, we have one more left. If the number's still there. This one was kind of like right on the borderline. If it's moved, we're not going to do it. But we are looking at, yep, that's our number. We are looking at that. Joe Burrow, under 24.5 completions, minus 121 at Caesars is our best line. You can see there's FanDuel's already at 23.5. Rivers is at 22.5. Not that I put a lot of value on what they think, but
that makes me want to go over.
I know it kind of does. But yeah, I mean, a lot of what this comes down to is that this is going to be an extremely slow paced game. Both of these teams play really, really slow. Mm-hmm. Probably not going to be a ton of plays run here. And there's the chance that Cincinnati's playing from ahead and is running the ball. So this projects well. You can see the Blitz is projecting about 22, showing some solid value here. So yeah, that is number 6, and I think we got all our numbers more or less. So that's nice.
And it is worth pointing out with Joe Burrow, you're playing the Ravens, a team that likes to run the football and shorten games.
Exactly. I mean, that's what I mean when I say slow pace. Like the Ravens, they're going to run, they're going to play slow. The Bengals are going to play slow. Even if the Ravens are ahead and the Bengals are trailing, the Ravens are going to lean on the run and try to run the clock out. So 24.5 is a big number, even for a good quarterback in a game environment like this.
And Nitish is curious, why not the passing yards under? So let's take a look there. But I have a feeling that this is more so you're looking at volume of plays that's going to be your big
because a lot of this is based on volume of plays. I like it more than the yards. Oh, wow. The yards projects really well, though.
Jesus.
Yeah,
maybe the yards is the move here.
Maybe. I mean, if you want to bet the yards, go right ahead.
Yeah.
I leaned completions just because it was the pace thing. Where he can throw a 70-yard pass to Jamar Chase, and then a 50-yard to T. Higgins, and then he goes over. Even if he only throws the ball 20 times, it can work the other way too. But I felt more confident in the completions in this spot.
Yeah. All right. So that is going to do it as far as your plays here. We're going to recap those, and then, guys, in the chat, it's free for all time. But real quick, just to show everybody what we're looking at here, we had Demario Douglas over 2.5 receptions, -103 at Bet Rivers. Roschon Johnson under 1.5 receptions, +105 at ESPN. Devon Achane under 12.5 rush attempts, -108 at Caesars. DeAndre Swift over 12.5 rushing attempts, -110 at MGM. Tyler Huntley over 16.5 completions, +107 at Pinnacle. Derek, I expect a big victory lap on the show next week if we cash that one. And then Joe Burrow under 24.5 passing completions, -121 at Caesars.
You know what? We got one more. The line had moved, and now it kind of moved back to where I want it to be.
Ooh, we got a bonus?
We got a bonus.
And there we go, because Josh Jacobs is one of the players that I know we had someone wanting to talk about in the chat here.
This has been bouncing around between 14.5s, 15.5s. The 15.5s have usually been more like -125, -130.
Mm-hmm.
I'm good here at this number. I think if you look at, a lot of times how books sit lines is like they look at what the guy's done, like their average. And that's what some projections do, not what the Blitz does.
Mm-hmm.
If you were to do that, you would severely overestimate Josh Jacobs' workload here because of the weeks with Malik Willis where they were so run heavy. When they're with Love, they're extremely pass heavy, one of the most in the league. They're in a dome here, which promotes more passing. Projects as a close game, so not necessarily a game where they're going to have to run the ball late necessarily. And Emmanuel Wilson is in the mix. This is a guy who historically, he doesn't like to lean. LaFleur doesn't like to lean on one running back. We saw it with Aaron Jones his entire time in Green Bay, basically. And they've had to do it with Jacobs early in the year because they lost Dillon, they lost Lloyd. Wilson was still kind of green. But they've been talking about how much they like Wilson. We've seen Wilson starting to get more carries. I like the under here when you consider that Jacobs might not get a big percentage of the carries anymore, and this team is probably going to be very pass heavy.
Yeah, it is. Like you said, you want to pay attention to these usage matters. You want to pay attention to these stats. Yahtzee says, saw a lot of Twitter dudes on Jacobs over carries.
I'm sure they were. Oh,
That's
look at his game logs. He's got over in 3 of 4 games or whatever it is. No, throw that out.
Yeah. So there you go. Those are the ones that we are looking at here. Josh Jacobs gets a late addition to it. Now let's go back up through the chat here and see what we can find. One, Estefanos really wants to know about Jerome Ford lines. So let's take a look at Jerome Ford rushing numbers here to start us off.
Yeah, he was one I was considering. I think his attempts was projecting pretty well. Yeah, it is. You can get a 10.5 -105 here. Blitz is projecting about 12.25. I want to know the status of Pierre Strong. If anyone has seen anything definitive about him today, I would like to see that. With Strong out last week, Ford basically just picked up all his extra work. Like they barely gave any of it to Foreman. So if that were to happen again, Ford looks pretty good. Right now, I'm actually projecting Strong in and this still looks pretty good. So yeah, I have no problem if you want to bet this.
An hour ago, Fantasy Pros had him listed as questionable.
Yeah, which is about all I've heard is just that he's questionable with the hamstring still.
Yeah, I think he'll probably be playing.
That's what I think. Like he said, he felt good during practice this week, so we'll up in the air, but that's how I'm projecting it now.
Yeah, we will see. All right, so that's the verdict on Jerome Ford there. Now going back through the list here, Mets wants to know, how does the Blitz project Cowboys running back usage this week?
Yeah, I whiffed on that last week. The Blitz is projecting Dowdle as the main guy, Zeke with some work behind him, and then Vaughn with some work behind him. Haven't noticed any value on any of them. Not really much here for Dowdle. Elliott doesn't have an attempts prop. We can look at yards. Zeke doesn't have anything.
Jeez.
Yeah, Dowdle, there's really no value on.
Yeah, not something really worth looking at today. Scrolling down the sheet here a little bit more. What's the motto? We already talked about Josh Jacobs there. Let's see, that Jerome Ford rushing line we talked about. Mac Hollins. Jovel wants to know about Mac Hollins from Houston.
All right. So, Mac Hollins is on Buffalo now. He's been getting a bunch of work. I mean, they mostly talk about his work as a blocker, but last week he got a bunch of targets too. Shakir is out this week, so that's going to open stuff up for Hollins, for Curtis Samuel, for Keon Coleman. We can see if there's any Mac Hollins props out there. The Blitz is pretty much projecting in line, not a lot of value. Oh, Hollins at Houston. Got it. Okay, yeah. So
that's it.
Buffalo's going into Houston.
Mhm.
This projects as, I believe, the slowest pace game of the entire week. So the Blitz isn't seeing a ton of volume here. And again, the Buffalo offense, they do spread the ball around, and Hollins is used more as a blocking receiver than as like a target.
Yeah. By the way, Michael saying so far based on his back test, under passing yards, under receptions, under receiving have been printing using the Blitz, and he bets everything. He bets everything at the. Are you betting, Michael? Are you betting everything at the 10% range, under it, over it? Talk to us there. James Rowe saying Zeke has cost me thousands this season. I traded for Zeke in a fantasy league.
Ooh,
not my finest moment. Even worse, I traded away Brian Robinson. I want to kill myself. Anyway. Two Nichols says, thanks for the shirt, Tom. It got here this week. Glad to hear it. Second, Derek, is there somewhere on EVA where I can find offensive pace of play for 2024?
That's a good question. I think there is. Oh, it looks like the page only has 2023 right now. I got to see why that's not updating. But the pace of play page at EV Analytics should have 2024 data. I'll see why it doesn't.
Mm-hmm. Jim Robinson saying the Huntley parlay at MGM was an outlier. Tried Burrow under, and it's only plus 105. Rodgers over some drops to minus 135. And James Rowe says, why Aaron Rodgers bamboozles so much? Sports Video saying, any passing yard overs the Blitz like this week? Felix offenses are waking up. I've noticed that. I've noticed that definitely in what I was betting earlier in the week here using the Blitz projections. A lot more overs this week than we've seen the past couple.
Yeah, we can take a look. We can do let's look at passing yards. I mean, it certainly liked who was it before that we looked at? Oh, Burrow, but no, that was an under. All right. Make sure we get them all.
I definitely noticed one with Jordan Love there.
So Tyler Huntley overs, but I mean, that's not a surprise. I like the completions more, but the yards work. Looks like some Jordan Love, a little bit of, where did he go? A little bit of Jordan Love value on the over, more unders than overs this week.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that is probably just because of the Blitz adjusting to the environment that we're seeing this year with the two high safeties, and teams are running more. Teams are playing slower. They aren't picking up chunk yardage as much. It's more short passes. So that's what we're looking at here.
Sports Video says, "Oh, great, more Huntley overs." Mets says, "Was on the right side of Kyron Williams' rush attempts last week. Can I go back to the well on under 19.5?"
Let's take a look. 19.5 is just a big number for any running back, but Kyron gets so much volume.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you were getting it at plus money, I think you take it at minus 120 or minus 125. That's not enough for me.
Mm-hmm. Doesn't look like you're finding that plus money
No.
out there. Bogler says, "Yeah, less passing except for studs like Kirk the Jerk and Geno Smith, the goats of the game." Let's see. Derek M says Chuba Hubbard rushing yards.
We can take a look. Like I said with Swift, it's going to be a fast-paced game. Not much value, though. They do work in Miles Sanders a good amount. They have been a bit more pass-heavy with Bryce Young or with Dalton than they were with Bryce Young. It seems like the market's got a pretty good idea who Chuba is.
Yeah. Also, Jalen Waddle receiving yards. He's someone who has not had a good season so far.
No, he hasn't. I mean, I imagine the Blitz is going to like it to some degree because it likes Huntley. I mean, a little, not bettable, especially if you also have Huntley. I wouldn't take a correlated play with that little value as well, but it's, it's something.
Yeah. Nitish says Jordan Mason under rushing attempts.
Yeah, I know the Blitz is on that a little bit, which just kind of goes against everything you would think here. Like, they're big favorites. Jordan Mason gets all the work, but his line is 20.5. 20.5 is a lot of freaking carries.
Oh,
a lot of carries.
And that's a game that shouldn't be a blowout. Like, the Cardinals are not terrible.
They're not terrible, yeah. I haven't bet this one yet. I've been a little scared to, because obviously you look at this and you're like, oh, Mason's going to smash. He's going to get a bunch of carries. But it's always relative to what the books are setting it at. 20.5 is a lot of carries.
Yeah. That is a lot. Boglor asked to know, do you ever work with props like most receiving yards / most rushing yards in a game? I don't know how the Blitz would model something like this, but there's been some good value on those markets on DraftKings. For example, he got plus 650 on Rachaad White, most rushing yards last night.
Oh, nice.
I feel like you got lucky if you had that one.
Well, he broke off that huge run. I haven't played much with those markets, but I would imagine kind of the more niche the market is, the less popular it is, the more value you're going to be able to find. I think I haven't looked at it, but I think there's probably some decent edge on those.
Yeah, Sports Video says, I don't think even CMC had lines this high last year.
No, he didn't. And I mean, Mason's done it twice and he's gone under twice. It's not like he's been doing this constantly. And he's probably overperforming. Like, running backs rarely anymore get 20 plus carries a game as their mean. Like, it just,
not to mention the fact all the injuries that you had, like Debo's coming back, Kittle's out there, like, playing pretty decently now. Ayuk is getting back into it.
And there's always the chance that Mason gets injured. Even if he gets injured for a drive or two, it basically like it can kill his chances of getting over a number this big. He gets banged up and has to sit out for a few plays. Like, there's a lot more ways he goes under than ways he goes over here. And that's kind of what the projection tries to reflect.
Yeah. Howdy says, anybody know why that Mason rushing attempts line would only be available at FanDuel? My guess is those are going to come out more tomorrow.
Yeah, I would guess this is going to move down to 19.5 at FanDuel, and that's where everyone else is going to open tomorrow.
Yeah. Nitish wants to know Fields under completions here. Oh, Milo Kaminsky saying he thinks Kittle hasn't practiced all week.
I didn't see today. He hadn't until today, at least.
Mm-hmm. Well, we will have to see how that does. But meanwhile, Nitish wants to know Fields under completions here. But yeah, that would be a little bit interesting on the Kittle line there.
I like the Fields under completions. I actually did this on a different show earlier. Fields under 18.5 minus 132 at FanDuel is the best line. There's 17.5. I guess at most books. Rivers also hanging in 18.5 still. Blitz is projecting about 15. You see here quite a bit under that line. Even the 17.5, there's solid value on those. Fields had the massive game last week, and I think this line is just an overreaction to that. people see that and they're like, oh, Justin Fields, he's back. He was so dynamic, and now he's situated in this offense. And probably not. Justin Fields is Justin Fields. He's a below average quarterback. He plays for Arthur Smith. They're the most run heavy offense in all of football. He's not particularly good. He doesn't have a particularly good set of receivers. I like his under a lot here.
Yeah. Howdy's saying, yeah, but for example, James Conner in the same game is fully populated. My guess is that Kittle, that people are waiting on Kittle news. That's probably what's keeping that one out there. Jim Robinson.
Also, just in general, I think that prop only got released maybe a couple hours ago.
Mm-hmm.
FanDuel a lot of times is the bravest of the sports books. They'll be willing to offer a market first, whereas you're not going to see. I'm not going to name names, but certain other books will never offer a prop first.
Yeah. Jim Robinson says, Derek, do you ever try and middle these? You'd think rushing attempts would be a good market for that versus yardages with such high variance. Achane middle available plus 11.5 minus 12.5 for 1,900 effectively.
I never try to do that. Generally because when the value shows so extremely on one side,
Mm-hmm.
I think ultimately you're decreasing your expected value by trying to middle it. But I don't do much of it. I haven't really even looked into it that much.
Joel Bogosh wants to know, are the Blitz pace numbers posted anywhere? So we've already talked about that a little bit. We'll be working on getting those up for 2024 because you do have them posted for previous years.
Yeah, I just got to see why they're not posting for 2024.
Mm-hmm. So we will get those up. Bro KGB says, is the Blitz holding back Indy projections pending all their possible injuries? They're actually waiting for us to finish this show because we might have to go and play.
Yeah. I'm not holding back projections. I imagine books are holding back lines because we don't even know who the quarterback's going to be.
Yeah.
The Blitz always has to project something. I make choices. Right now, I'm projecting Flacco as the quarterback.
He practiced today, apparently.
He did, and he took most of the first team reps, they said. So I'm projecting Flacco as the quarterback. I would imagine when we get some Michael Pittman line, they're going to project well. So I'm going to be looking out for that. But for now, I don't think books are offering stuff until we know what's going on.
Yeah. All right. Well, we've actually gotten to the end of the chat here. So I guess, guys, be sure, first off, if you haven't already, we've got over 100 people watching. If you haven't hit that like button or hit that subscribe button, please do both of those. And please throw in any more questions that you have for us, or else we're going to head out of here a little bit early today. We'll see about that, but we'll see what's going to go on there depending on chat. It's going to be up to you guys to determine that. Andrew Luter says, when will Unabated add Fliff? Soon. Very soon. We are working on it actively. We will. I can't give you a date, but Fliff will be on the screen eventually in the very near future here. Boglor says, here's a bit of a meta question. I have been split between subbing to EV Analytics outright versus subbing to Unabated, which is more expensive, offers the same projections, but cost more. I mean, the obvious bias that is going to come up here, I personally think using them both together works really well. First off, for the tools, but then it's also with the Unabated subscription, you're not just getting props. You are also getting all of the main markets, all of the simulators, all of the other tools we have. So it's like the two go together great for this particular function, but there is a lot more that is also there to justify your cost subscription for both there. Sports Videos asks, are you docking any players in the London game just based on travel?
A little bit. It's not like something we can really quantify, but it's applying home field advantage basically differently to them than it would playing in the United States.
Mm-hmm. Sports Videos also said, he says, how do you handle those games? How D asks, what about the Minnesota Vikings running game?
Like props for it?
Yeah.
We can take a look. Looks like no value on Jones. Not much value on Chandler either.
Mm-hmm.
It is going to be rainy in London, it looks like, but the Blitz is already accounting for that. So,
yeah. As Jim points out, Boglor, got to have both if you want to be serious about this. Worth their weight in gold. Unabated has much, much more to offer than just prop projections. Jim takes the words right out of my mouth there. What's the motto wants to know about Jaden Daniels' regression this week. And while you pull up those lines, we'll also after that hit Amari Cooper. Although I believe we talked about him a little bit, we definitely talked about Deshaun Watson. We'll talk about that too. Don't worry. But another thing to really watch out for that maybe isn't being taken into account with the London game in the rain is they are playing on a soccer field, a pitch, and those are not nearly as tough as American turf is. That could really be something when it comes to defenses not really being able to get the plant down, their plant foot down, being slow to react. Like that could be a very big deal here.
No, I like that angle. Jaden Daniels obviously is not going to be as good as he's been so far, but the Blitz is kind of seeing him about the same as the market is, it looks like.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. How about Amari Cooper over? Patrick Fayon wants to know. Welcome, Patrick. I don't think I've seen your name on the sheet here before. James Rose saying soccer field is way better than trash turf. It's a better playing surface. But when you have rain and football, not soccer, it's not better. Trust me. Remember the Dolphins Steelers game that all those years ago in London in the torrential. There was one in just an absolute torrential downpour. It was so bad. The game finished like 3-0, and there was one. there was one punt that the Steelers had, and the Dolphins returner went to like catch it off the bounce, and it just stuck in the mud. It literally did not bounce. It just went right into the mud and stayed there. It was a horrific field.
Amari Cooper. Not a lot of value here. It looks like pretty much in line with the market. We can check his receptions, but I think, even less. So, not one I'd look at this week.
Let's see. We talked about Jaden Daniels regression. Derek M wants to know about Dontavian Wicks. Amazing name, and we've talked about him before on this show, especially with Christian Watson hurt.
I don't think they have. Oh, they do have props up. So right now it's not showing any value, although it's worth noting Romeo Doubs didn't practice today. I think they said a personal reason, so we don't know what his status is going to be. If Doubs were out, obviously Christian Watson is already out. We could see this popping up. I'm surprised they're offering lines, given the uncertainty of such a key piece of that offense like that. I mean, if it was showing even modest overvalue, I might take it just with that chance, but looking at it here, we look at the yards. Yeah, I probably don't risk it. I probably just wait for the Doubs news.
Mm-hmm. Then let's see here. Raheem Mostert not on the injury report today, as Andrew Rivers points out. Very good point. Colin McKenna says, do you ever same game parlay a few plays that are good to model and fit your belief on game script, or only straights? I mean, you can.
You definitely can. And parlays are a good way to, keep your account healthy. It kind of signals to the book that, if you're just betting straight player props, unders on stars and overs on little, third string tight end kind of guys, like the books might profile you as a sharp player, which you probably are, and you might get limited. If you're throwing in some parlays look like a fish play, even though they're not, is if you're using plus EV plays.
Yes. It's a great way to throw the books off of your scent and maybe increase your account longevity a little bit as well. Graham O'Brien wants to know if you would feel comfortable playing Patrick Mahomes past TDs over despite the lineup uncertainty there. And Dave Clark says that 3-0 game was in Pittsburgh, not in London. Yes, that is my bad there. There was another Dolphins London game in the turf that was horrifically rainy. I do remember that. But yeah, that 3-0 game was in Pittsburgh. My bad there. Still, legendary stuck punt.
Mahomes passing touchdowns, was that the question?
Yes.
We're going to need to jump over to EV Analytics for that one because the simulator, I don't think, does that market yet.
Yeah, not yet.
Yeah, depending on the line you get, it looks like there is some value. If you can get the plus 110, there's a little bit there. The plus 105 is okay. Yeah, I mean, it's Mahomes.
Yeah,
Mahomes is good. Losing Rice hurts, but he's played. I mean, last year he was still elite with, not a great core of receivers.
Yep. That's what you have to look at some point. You have to say it is Mahomes, although I will say it felt so again, last week I talked about this. It felt so weird, feeling weird about playing a Patrick Mahomes over, and sure enough, he falls short by a yard.
Yeah, that's brutal. I was surprised how few yards the Blitz hasn't projected for this week. Like, it's just wild, but the touchdowns are still showing some value, it looks like.
Yeah. All right. Well, it looks like that is going to do it for us here. Natish also saying the Blitz projections, Jaden Daniels at 180. But yeah, it looks like that is going to do it for us here on the show this week. Guys, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for watching along with us. We appreciate it. Of course, one more recap of what we've got as far as the plays for today. Demario Douglas over 2.5 receptions, -103 at Bet Rivers. Roschon Johnson under 1.5 receptions. Devon Achane under 12.5 rush attempts. DeAndre Swift over 12.5 rush attempts. Tyler Huntley over 16.5 completions. Joe Burrow under 24.5 passing completions. And Josh Jacobs under 15.5 rushing attempts. Thank you guys all for being here so much. We truly do appreciate it. We appreciate all of the support. We appreciate you guys throwing all of your comments in the chat, all of your questions for us. It is always a great time being with you guys. And we do have one last question from Mets here. Derek, who's your World Series MVP?
I mean, if odds aren't a thing, give me Ohtani.
Yeah. I'm holding out. I feel like if they make it and win it, you have to give Grimace the MVP. If the Mets win the World Series, Grimace is MVP.
Yeah.
Unquestionably. I've never seen it. It's hilarious watching the Mets struggle between being the team of destiny and also being the Mets.
It really is a pretty funny dynamic.
Yep. But we will see what happens there. But in the meantime, once again, thank you all so much. We'll be back here next week, same time, same place, noon Pacific time, 3 p.m. Eastern, and of course, 11 a.m. Pacific time, 2 p.m. Eastern, talking college football props with Chris K as well. And if you want to sweat out some of these games, some of these props during the witching hour this Sunday, come join me at 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. Basically halftime of the first slate of games, all the way to the end of those games. We'll be going along. We'll be sweating out bets. We'll be talking about in-game movement and things like that, and just having a good time. Come hang. It'll be a good time. But for now, we'll catch you next week. And as always, let's cash some tickets. Best of luck, everybody. See you next time.